Good morning. Usually that requires a response, but we'll go with that. We'll go with what we got this morning. I want to welcome everybody to our People's Forum today. Thank you for taking out your time Saturday morning, coming out participating. We really appreciate that. I want to start out by thanking our sponsors, the LULAC Council 10, that report NAACP, Chapter 4019, and local chapter of the AAUW. So we want to appreciate you guys for sponsoring this event. The unit behind this is called Power in Our Numbers. And this is a partnership of a lot of local organizations, LULAC, WCP, AAUW, some of our local fraternities and sororities, and some of our local civic organizations. And it's called Power in Our Numbers. And our goal is to look into social justice and to do whatever we can in the community to have further cause of fairness, rights, and all those silly things that go along with living in our fair city. With that being said, our forum today will focus on the sheriff's office position this morning. And we'll start out, I'll introduce our moderator, Mr. Daniel Salazar, will be the moderator for the event this morning. And Mr. Salazar is the immediate past LULAC State Director. He's an educator. He's a graduate of St. Ambrose University. He's actively involved in social justice, local politics, and he hails Muscatine, Iowa. So I'd like to introduce our moderator for today, Mr. Daniel Salazar. Thank you.
There it is. Hi, guys. Well, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. We'll figure out sound in a second. I got my sound guy working on it. But so yeah, just like you said, this is our second annual People's Forum. This time we're going to be looking at the Scott County Sheriff, the Scott County Auditor today. It's hosted by a lot of different groups in the community, just trying to do a lot of this is a nonpartisan forum whose goal is to provide an avenue for candidates and citizens to be heard. In an effort of transparency, both candidates were given the same questions beforehand. So before I dive into some of the rules, I just wanted to say there is some new legislation going on regarding human trafficking. Specifically, talk to your representatives, talk to those who are elected officials who represent me. Specifically, so they can establish a human trafficking survivors services fund. It's $1 million for those who have had to deal, unfortunately, with human trafficking. So on your tables, there's a lot more information that you can read. You'd probably like to do that more than hear me talk about it. So make sure you take a look at that. Okay? Thank you. So before we start, I'm going to go over some of the rules. Each candidate has a couple minutes for introductions, opening remarks. They'll have 2 minutes each to answer their questions. They may only speak during the time allotted. Additional responses are definitely allowed. Just ask, please. And then after our pre-written portion of the meeting, we're going to move into questions from the audience. So on those tables in front of you, there's some note cards and there's also a pencil. Go ahead and write your question down if you have one for the gentleman up here. And we'll have people walking around to pick those up from you. They'll look through it and then give it to me and I'll ask, no problem. If time permits, which I think it will, each candidate will have a couple minutes for closing remarks. And we'll take a 10-minute break or so and we'll move on to our next one. Okay? So, Jeff, thanks for being here. Whatever order you want, you guys can give a little introduction on yourself.
All right. Sheriff Tim White. I've been with the Scott County Sheriff's Office now almost 36 years, starting in 1989 when I was 20 years old. So, I've lived in this county all my life, went to North Scott High School and St. Ambrose University. When I graduated from St. Ambrose, I went to the Scott County Jail. I became a correctional officer, Scott County Sheriff's Office. And that was some excellent experience for a guy that was going to spend his career in law enforcement, particularly being a patrolman. 1991, I was sworn in by Sheriff Forrest Ashcraft, the deputy sheriff in Scott County, and I went on patrol for 25 years. During those 25 years, I spent obviously 25 years working in the community. The community, staying in the community that I grew up in, and I climbed the ranks. As I climbed the ranks, there's my yellow sign. When I climbed the ranks, I became a lieutenant. I became in charge of the Scott County Special Operations Unit, which was a new unit at the time. And I found that Special Operations Unit was very effective in solving some of our long-term issues that we were having out in our community. Essentially, what it did was it reached into what we consider even to the problem, the basis of the problem, and it really solved a lot of crime for us. So I knew when I became sheriff that a Special Operations Unit was going to be very, very important. It was going to be important that I expanded and created a countywide task force that is now very, very successful. It's the first ever such task force in Scott County. That along with strengthening the sex offender unit so that we could monitor the over 500 sex offenders in Scott County. That was a second important thing for me to do within the Scott County Sheriff's Office. And my time is up. Basically, I'd like to say that the third item that I was very strong about was the programming that we had in the Scott County Jail to ensure that inmates had some programming so that we could anticipate that some of them go down a different path once they move these jails. So with that, I'll
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for showing up tonight or this morning. My name is Tom Gibbs. I was born here in Davenport, Iowa, but I grew up in Portable in Iowa City. I graduated high school out there, and then I took a different path of service for our country. I enlisted in the Air Force, where I served for over 5 years. I was a military working dog handler and a law enforcement patrolman. My last duty station was working in explosive detection dog, which is a bomb dog essentially, for the Air Force One Mission Support Complex. So anytime the president would fly out on Air Force One, we would be involved. While in service, I deployed twice to Saudi Arabia and did other various Navy details in support of the Secret Service. After I separated the Air Force, I wanted to be a big city cop to see if I could do it. So I joined the Metropolitan Police Department of Washington, D.C. While in the police academy, 9/11 happened. I was there. It was quite the experience. I did my service in Washington, D.C. When I decided it was time to go home, I wanted to visit there. So I came back here in 2004, where I was hired by Sheriff Dennis Conner. I helped start the first ever K-9 unit for the Sheriff's Office. I've held the rank of sergeant. I'm currently a lieutenant for the Sheriff's Office. And I've been here for over 20 years. One of the other last things that I can say before the time runs out is Sheriff Conner appointed me to be his last chief deputy. So I held the rank of major and essentially under sheriff during his time. So I look forward to the discussions today. Thanks for coming.
I might share that. Word what we got, right? Anyway, so my first question, you guys answered a little bit, but this will give you more time to go into more depth. Is why should the people of Scott County vote for you?
I'll take this as a newcomer because people have already voted for the sheriff, obviously. So the sheriff and I think we work well together, but I think we also offer very different perspectives on the sheriff's office. And so, as with any elected official, it's important that the citizens that we're going to serve learn about what the values, mission, and key things are. And does that align with you? It's all about the voters who we serve, it's building those relationships, and help build an understanding and bridge the community gap. That's how I think we're gonna work well.
So I really believe there's a lot of reasons why people should vote for me as sheriff. One is that I bring the most experience and the most history to the position of sheriff. I find that a lot of the decisions that I make as sheriff are based on what I know of the history of the Scott County Sheriff's Office. Things that we have done in the past, things that we have changed in the past, and things that we've made better in the past. And I constantly get suggestions, they come to me that say, well, I think you should do this. I think you should go this direction. Well, there's a reason why I'm going the direction that I am as sheriff, and that is because I know the history of the sheriff's office. I know what has been very, very effective within the sheriff's office. So like I said in the introduction, when I became in charge of a new unit, the special operations unit, I saw how effective it was. Because it was so effective, when I became sheriff, I made that a county-wide task force. So that was a decision that I had made based on my experience. This question comes up a lot at work. It's should we go this direction? No, it's because that has not been successful for us in the past. Other sheriffs have moved away from such a thing, and I was there when such a thing happened. An example would be we were going to save a lot of money by only having 10 squad cars. I said I remember when we had 12 squad cars, people sitting and waiting to have a squad car to drive to go on patrol. There was cars broke down, there were cars that were damaged, and we did not have enough cars. No, we promise you this will work. No, I promise you it won't. Okay. The riots of 2020 happened. And when I went out amongst the rioting, I saw Scott County marked patrol cars everywhere. More than 10. And I went into the command center and I said, had we not had all those cars and put all those deputies out there, we would have had a different result by morning. And they said, absolutely, that's absolutely true. That is a sign of what experience brings.
Thank you. So moving on, obviously you both have a lot of experience, so you have an understanding of how things do work. So day one, when you're elected, what's that number one priority moving forward?
So I think people know what my priorities are because I've been around for 2 terms already. So the protection of children is the number one priority. And there's a couple different ways that we need to prioritize that modern day. One is they need to be protected in the schools. So there's a lot of pressure to get rid of school resource officers, but I don't believe that. Our school resource officers stay in the schools because they're part of that community. They're part of that school atmosphere. So our school resource officers are very connected to their schools. One of the school resource officers graduated from that school and he really excelled in sports. And now he's a school resource officer there and also a coach. And his heart and soul is in that school. So why would I take him out of that school? And the schools need protection, additional protection now in the face of law enforcement there. The enforcement is not to put the pressure on the kids. The officers there to put the children at ease and the parents at ease and be there in case of an emergency. God forbid it ever happens. So that's one way to protect children, but another way to protect children is from sex offenders. When you have over 500 sex offenders that you're registering in the county, you have danger to your children. And we know that danger, what danger potentially can happen. It is the danger of people like Henry Dinkins and the murder of Horatio Trudeau. When you go back 30 years from that happened in 2020, you go back 30 years from that was Stanley Liggins. It's very, very similar crime. It's the sex offender who kidnaps the child, what we believe is sexually molests that child and then kills them to cover up their crime and then hides the body. Now, if you could not find your child for 9 months, in that particular case, how would you feel? That is devastating to a community. We must protect our children. It is #1 priority. I see that there's pressure to go away from that. But we don't really realize that nationwide, there is a lot of pressure still towards monitoring sex offenders that offend towards children. Good reason. That case was tried right here in Scott County, Iowa. Jetsetta Gage is the name of the young lady who was kidnapped and murdered. And the trial happened here in Scott County, Iowa. Nationwide, we went with lifetime sex offender registry that was public. So when you consider that we went 30 years with such a kidnap murder, it shows that the sex offender registry works.
So there'd be a few priorities if elected. First would be building the relationships with internal and external customers, building the relationships with our civic organizations. It's not about me going out and talking, but it's about this. What are the concerns of the community? How can we help serve them? How can we help build an understanding and help bridge the communities that we serve? There's a lot of violence within the cities that we police, and we've got to do a better job of building the relationships so we can help solve the crime and the citizens that we serve have trust in the work that we do. But a big concern will be accreditation for me. Accreditation will look at a lot of different avenues as far as government efficiency, staffing levels, policies, procedures, and our current practices. That's a big lift. And it's one of my top priorities to help ensure that we are effectively serving the citizens that we serve the best that we can. I also want to, like the sheriff said, ensure jail programming is adequate, right? As people come into the jail, how can we help them not come back? What services can we provide them to help them better themselves, whether it's education, drug treatment, or even parenting classes? But how can we help build and provide services to help them improve their lives? I also want to ensure that we're doing adequate training as far as constitutional policing goes, and I want to improve community engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. So moving on, so speaking of children, speaking of the youth, and speaking of school resource officers, what is your opinion on the value of intervention of at-risk youth in danger of future incarceration? Is there currently or has there ever been a program that addresses that issue?
Not aware of any programs. I'm not at the level of the sheriff is to have some of those conversations. I know Family Resources has some kind of intervention, GBI, the gun violence intervention programs. I know they're working within the community to help those that are affected by some of the gun violence. And Family Resources would be a great avenue to help advocate and build those bridges. But at the same time, I would also argue sometimes incarceration is also the answer that needs to be considered because it provides a captive audience for counseling, education, and therapy.
So at this time, the group violence intervention program is our best solution to the problem of youth violence that we see in our community. So it's too early to say exactly the effectiveness of this program. In other parts of the country, they find it to be effective, but there is no program that's 100% effective. So I'd love to find it out one that is 100% effective, but there really is no such thing. At this point, we find that it's maybe 20 to 25% effective. That means that we still have 75 to 80% of our violent youth that is still at risk. And that is the purpose of our new facility that is going to open up soon. And people need to understand that the goal of such a building is essentially so that you can continue with the same programming, but you can isolate the child from the problem. So a lot of people don't like it because they believe that it is merely setting them up for a life of being institutionalized. But the fact is, if nothing is done, they are set up to be in a life of being institutionalized, if not dead from the violence that is occurring in our community. Intervention of troubled youth is essentially the most important thing that we can do for that youth. But we have to consider that enforcement is part of the intervention plan. That means that when they're actively involved in violent crime, law enforcement needs to be the one that intervenes. And at that time, the juvenile system determines the best course of action after that.
Thank you, gentlemen. Traditionally, there has been a divide between law enforcement and communities of color. What do you think can be done or is being done to help bridge that divide?
So I was asked that exact same question when I first became sheriff. And I said at that time, when I was in college, there was an entire course of study on that very subject. It wasn't a new course of study, it was old, been around for a long time. And I took that course, and that question still comes to me today. And my answer is, the person who is going to school right now to learn to be a law enforcement will probably be asked that question about the time that they're about to retire. Because this is something that in our community always exists. The question of fairness. Fairness for reasons such as gender, race, color. All those things are factors in our community and always will be. And we value fairness. And since we value fairness, we will always ask that question, are we being fair to everyone? Are we being fair to every group? And I believe that law enforcement is underrated in the amount that they value that as well. So there is a divide. And there's no doubt that there is a divide, but we participate in attempting to bridge that divide. And I believe that that we particularly at the sheriff's office value that, and I believe we always will, and I believe we do pretty much what we can to try to assure the community that that's how we.
So law enforcement as a profession, just as the history of our country has a sketchy beginning, not exactly a proud moment. It goes back to slavery, goes back to when law enforcement was used to return slaves to their masters. And that's a history that we have to own and accept and acknowledge. Did we fail? Absolutely fail. The Constitution as it is protects all people. And that's where the training comes in. That we better know that just because laws are passed doesn't make them constitutional, doesn't make them lawful. That's why we've got the system of courts to help balance that all out. But the big thing that we can do, or that I can try to do as sheriff, is if there is that divide, is help bridge that gap, right? Police are the community is the police. If we don't work together to solve problems, we're going to be at odds for a very long time. We've got to work together to solve the crime that's happening in our community, because people in the community know what's happening. I think they're afraid sometimes to come forward. We've got to bridge that gap, build those relationships, and help provide the understanding on both sides of what's going on.
Thank you, guys. So on the topic of people of color, recently there was some legislation introduced regarding undocumented individuals, which created a lot of stir in the community. So the next question is this. According to the American Immigration Council, nearly 28,000 U.S. citizens in Iowa live with at least one family member who is undocumented. With ever-changing laws and a duty to protect and serve, how do you see the department's relationship with these undocumented folks and making them feel protected and served as well in the community?
So immigration is a federal power. As a local sheriff, my job is to protect the community, regardless of they're here illegally or legally. The problem is when people are here illegally, they can become victims of crime because they fear reporting that crime will get them in trouble or get them deported. And so they're being further victimized within our own community. We need to prevent that from happening. They've got to feel comfortable in coming forward. Again, it goes back to building those relationships with those communities. I know there's a project in the community of community ID, trying to get undocumented people a community ID form. So it will help bridge the gap with law enforcement. That will provide language of preference so we can help better communicate with them. It'll also provide for translators, and in emergencies, it'll provide for medical emergencies where the allergic to what can assist them.
So as sheriff, I received some emails of such a group that wanted to meet with me. And we attempted to set up several meetings, and the responses essentially were, well, we have people who have to work during that time frame, but we have people who can't make it during that time frame. We went back and forth for a little while trying to set up a meeting. Eventually I said, hey, listen, why don't we just meet between 10 o'clock mass and 12 o'clock mass? Because I know we go to the same church. And he said, yeah, that'll work. So me and my family attend Spanish mass probably once every couple of months. Obviously in mass, there's a lot of individuals there that are undocumented. They know who I am. Father Rudy tells them who I am. And I sat in a room with them and started discussing this particular issue with them. And there were interpreters in the room. They're sitting there talking to the sheriff of the county about their issue that they want to resolve. Being involved in the community is the most important thing that you can do. Being involved in the entire community is the most important thing that you can do as sheriff. You have to be part of the community that you serve. And I believe that that is just one of many ways to reach out. But I know that 28,000 estimated number is pretty accurate. That is not particularly high for what other states see for their total number of undocumented individuals in their state. So I am concerned about such an issue that the individuals do not feel that they can report crime. The best way to reach out is myself meeting with such individuals and community leaders doing the same. And the sheriff's office does meet with the community leaders once every 2 weeks to send that message out that we're working with them and that they can report crimes to us. They can report crimes to them, and that can be reported to us as well.
All right, thank you, Joe. So moving on, we're going to jump into some questions from the audience here. This was a hard one. What are the responsibilities, the job of sheriff? And well, to elaborate, is how would you do those?
So the state code has approximately 64 requirements of the sheriff of the county. But regardless of going through all those 64 requirements, the job of the sheriff essentially is to be in charge of the Scott County Jail. Scott County Jail has at any given time approximately 375 inmates. We supply the security for the courthouse, and that means the court system, the trials, moving inmates in and out for the court appearances within the courthouse. Serve all the court documents through our civil process. And then, of course, we have the enforcement side, which are the deputy sheriffs who do the patrol, the arrests, the investigations. And that is essentially the job of the sheriff, utilizing approximately 200 employees. We in Scott County have the most elaborate reserve deputy program that you will find anywhere. Last year, they won the international award for the best reserve officer program in the world. So they went to the international conference, and that is because you will see those reserve deputies involved in a lot of community events. One of them's happening today, one of them's happening right now, and that's the car show at the Mississippi Valley Fairgrounds. They're involved in fundraisers, they fundraise for their own equipment and their own benefit, and they fundraise for and donate that money as well to worthy organizations. So the job of the sheriff is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It is never ending. And I see my red card coming up here in a second. I love every benefit. That's the last news.
What he said. So he's the only duty responsibility of the sheriff's office is also as a commissioner on the Emergency Management Commission. They default as being a licensed sheriff, you are automatically on the commission. That commission's sole responsibility is to help ensure that the county is prepared for emergencies that might happen. A big one is being involved with the Cordova nuclear power plant that we got. We hold annual or every other year exercises to make sure that we are prepared to help ensure that the citizens are protected, should that emergency arrives. And so the EMA commission is another component. But as you said, the jail is involved with the time, enforcement, control operations, investigations, being engaged with the community. So the sheriff is working 24/7. And it's a very important role for the community.
Thank you. So this one, there's two that they deal with inmates. So I just kind of ask them this one. So what would you do or is done for the mental health of an inmate? And are there any programs in that inmate rehabilitation? If so, what are they? If not, why?
So unfortunately, with me being lieutenant control, I'm not involved in jail operations as much anymore. As a former chief deputy, I can say that there were what I used to do. So there was a mental health professional, or professionals that would come in 2 or 3 times a week to provide an evaluation, any medication is necessary. Then it gets into, again, what jail program services are we offering for that mental health. Another component that we do offer, I think still here is mental health court. So if somebody would come in, they can be diverted to mental health court to hopefully help them with their treatment, get them back in compliance with medication if needed, and then expunge that record upon successful completion of mental health court. But the mental health, there's actually a great book by Sheriff Tony Thompson. He's the sheriff of Blackhawk County, that essentially the jails in America are very crowded with mental health problems. So as people with mental health commit crimes, obviously they're incarcerated. We try to provide them services as best we can. But it's giving them back in the community, giving them back and give them help with their mental health issues.
So mental health is the most frustrating issue that we have in our community right now. So I'm going to tell you about an experience that I had. I was walking into the courthouse. A gentleman had just been released from the County Jail. He said, "Hey, can I talk to you?" And he started talking. Clearly, he had some serious mental health problems. He was missing most of his teeth, and from the sides of his mouth, there was serious infection in his mouth. And when he spoke, there was infection that was coming out of his mouth. And it was very heartbreaking to watch this. Now, when this guy went to jail, I can tell you why he went to jail. I'd never looked up his case or anything. The officer came across him for one reason or another. And at some point in time, he said, "This man needs some serious help." But the only help that this guy can get is that we can take him to jail. And in the jail, we can give him a place to sleep, out of the weather, and he can get a meal. And he can go to court, and in the morning they're going to say, "We're going to release this guy." And that essentially is happening all of the time because there is no other option set up for such a gentleman that is in our society that is seriously mentally ill, but he is not actively trying to hurt somebody and he's not actively trying to hurt himself. Now, when you watch this happen day in and day out, it is very, very frustrating because even as sheriff, there is very little that you can do to help this man. I can tell you a second situation where a lady lived her entire life and she was very, very healthy, and lived in an apartment, had children and everything, but as she grew into her elderly years, she developed dementia, and she would not allow them to come into her apartment and spray for bugs. She ended up evicted from her apartment, living on the street in her 70s, and the officers started doing the same thing, bringing her into the jail because they believe that it is the best way that they can provide her a roof, a meal, and somebody watching her so she does not become a victim. Mental health, my time's running out. I could talk all day about the mental health issues that we have across this state, across this country, that every year the legislature tells us we have a new plan, but every plan just divides up where the district is and how we're going to look at it, but nobody's going to pay for the person to go to the hospital and receive the mental health treatment that they need. And they will allow them to live on the streets. And when you did not several years ago see all these people sleeping on the streets, you now see it if you go downtown. Well, if you drive around when you leave, you're going to see it. This didn't exist a few years ago, and this is a serious, serious problem. And we need a nationwide solution. Nobody wants to be the country's only solution and have the entire problem flood to their area. So a national solution to this mental health problem is truly our only way out of this.
Thank you. So another question here from the audience, and involves child protection. What services exist to protect the growing number of homeschooled children through the sheriff's office? If any.
Kind of confused on the protection of homeschool.
Yeah. So okay, child protection, what services exist to protect the growing number of children?
Yeah. So the sheriff's office does not have a particular program that specifically targets protecting homeschooled children. However, there are people that have genuine concern that homeschooled children are being kept away from essentially being able to report things that are happening within their own home. That is a genuine concern. Those issues do exist. Now, the way I understand it, homeschool children still have requirements that they have to attend certain public events as part of their certified homeschool program. Okay, I see some heads shaking, but I do know some homeschool kids that do actually attend that. So
yeah, it's a variety of services in summer completely.
I'm completely off the grid, that's what you're saying. So to answer the question, we do not have a particular program within the Scott County Sheriff's Office, but that would fall under I still call it DHS, but HHS is the new one that I haven't yet adopted. The new acronym that I haven't yet adopted, but it still falls under them. And if there are concerns, that is the direction to go to. Initially, of course, if there are immediately concerns, the sheriff's office will address any.
It provides some context. So if we would respond to all, again, if there's situations that raise concern, deputies are mandatory first reporters are required to report those things to HHS for them to further investigate and provide further information on that's more within their realm than it is the sheriff's office. But again, as the situations arise, again, the office of sheriff is not we don't legislate, but we advocate. Right? We have this personal relationship with legislators to help bring forth issues that might arise. Public schooling is obviously one of those issues.
Thanks, Jim. Moving on. So, there's a lot that can be said about this question, but I try to clear it up and make it simple that I could. Human trafficking has expanded in Scott County at an exponential rate. What can you do to reduce and cut that human trafficking happening, and what has been done, not just in the community, but with partnerships throughout Iowa to deal with that situation and to help them deal with those survivors?
So I'm sure the sheriff can elaborate a little more and have more information. I know the sheriff's office recently participated in a national day of human trafficking. It was hosted, I believe, by the state of Iowa, out of Division of Criminal Investigation, which we participated in. I think there was some success received out of that operation to help identify victims and provide them to not treat them as offenders, but recognize that they are victims and rather run on services to help them out. There's issues at the legislative level that need to be addressed. There's, I believe, outside of the new fund that was created, there's also a federal gap. I can definitely provide more information. I believe the feds cut $5 million from the Victim Services Fund that we were trying to lobby the legislature to fill that gap to ensure that we provide victims with the appropriate services. There's also different issues that arise. There's a case out of Des Moines that made the news. Where was who was being trafficked. I believe she killed her provider or whatnot, and was actually charged with the crime instead of being treated as the victim. So there's different things that we need to sort of look at crimes as they happen, but also provide some respect.
So pretty much all year, we had planned to be one of the few agencies in Iowa that participated in the nationwide human trafficking. Basically, it's a sting operation, and we had set up a location, and we had a lot of preparation in pulling in some individuals that have been involved in human trafficking. We were using a lot of intelligence that we had been gathering for a while. And on August 22nd is when we actually performed that. We initially did not release the information that we had participated in that event because that event was very productive and we were able to get a lot of information from the individuals that we were able to essentially catch in that sting operation. And there was a lot of follow-up from that. But I can say what was reported back to me was one particular lady, they described her as a shell of a human being. From what she had experienced from being trafficked in our area, she was exactly that kind of an individual. So these services would be very, very essential for her to help her move forward with her life. And of course, there's individuals there that their jail is their future. That's because of their involvement in the traffic that we essentially were able to stop. So I consider that to be a success. That is not the only actual event that we have participated in, but since that event had taken place, we since had sent out a press release of our accomplishment and our accomplishments across the state.
Thank you, Jim. So this next one dealing with the topic of school shootings. So the question is, how ready would you say the sheriff's department is to respond to those incidences when they do happen in those small and large schools? And what do you have in place, or what do you think you ought to be doing to help prevent those?
So we conduct training now in the schools to prepare the entire law enforcement in Scott County for an active shooter in the school. So when I first became sheriff, the first thing that I did was, and I can't say the first thing I did, but the first thing I did towards this issue, which was in 2017, I got the entire agency throw over tactical armor. In the event that such an incident would take place, they would throw this armor over them in order to protect them from gunshots. And then we went and we sought to replace our early model AR-15s with a superior model, modern model AR-15. The purpose of that was in the event of an active shooter, not necessarily just at a school, but an active shooter situation, the officer needs to know that he's going to go in, he's going to survive, and he's going to take out the threat. Take out the killer is what I'm going to say. Take out the killer. And we conduct this training annually. We do it at the schools. And I want to go to a situation that happened that startled the entire United States, probably startled the entire world, and that's Uvalde, Texas. What happened was the officers went into the school, they knew children were dying, they went in there without seeing the gunman, they heard the concussion of the gunfire inside the school and they froze. They thought they were going to die. They were not prepared to hear the intensity of the gunfire and knowing that a child died every time gunshot went off. They stood there. They stood there. That can't happen again. So we train to see that that doesn't happen. They go to the training, they hear the gunshots. They're not real gunshots, of course. There's simulations so that you know how you will react if you run into a school at that time. It's very important to me that that never happens. That's why I acted the way that I did. The last thing I want to say is, you teach them a human being potentially go into a school, shoot a child in the back, because it's killing other children. You're going to lose officers who have to experience that. You're going to lose officers from that happening. And that's why we have to prevent it. So I've done everything I possibly can to ensure the deputies, they're going to go in, even if they're alone, they have the equipment, they have the training, they know what they're doing, they're going to survive, and they're going to save children. So I'm sorry that I broke up a little bit there, but it does mean a lot to law enforcement to be prepared for such a thing and to see that these things happen across the country. So the last thing I'm going to say is, we address every issue of a child being in school. And we've had to address a lot of issues here recently, not because necessarily there's more of them, but because we ignored a lot of them in the past as being empty threats, and a lot of them were empty threats. But we are actively involved in all these threats to the community and to the schools, because people need to know when they send their child to the school that they're going to be safe and they're going to come home safe.
So Sheriff, pointing out, we do quite a bit of training when it comes to the individual officer response when it comes to active shooters. Because as many of you are aware, these things don't just happen in schools, unfortunately. We've had real ones here in Danforth, St. Crossroads, Bedworth. So these things can happen anywhere at any time. So we do training, as the sheriff mentioned, to prepare the individual officers for those responses. I think it'd be nice to build the gap with the community to help teach them what to expect should they be encountered with that type of an environment. I'd also like to see some more command level training, because as those situations happen, it is chaotic. And we've got to train people that at some point somebody's got to take control, guide the operations to help smooth out the chaos that's ensuing. But yeah, as the sheriff said, it's one of those things that we hope we never have to have happen here. But God forbid if it ever does, we're prepared to respond to that. It shouldn't be.
Thank you, gentlemen. Moving on here, what is currently available for training, for officers to deal with, people from diverse populations? And or what kind of training do you think should be implemented?
So I'm assuming this refers to de-escalation. We also do implicit bias training to help bridge the gap of our own implicit biases that people may have. Again, as we're the police, we're not perfect. We are from the communities that we serve. So some of the same things that the communities experience as far as biases are the same ones that law enforcement are going to experience. Going to provide training to help them overcome those biases should they not even realize that. And then de-escalation, I will give Sheriff Lane credit. We are working, we're probably at least more than halfway through the entire department going through crisis intervention training. So it's helping officers recognize people who are in crisis, help slow down their response should the situation allow it, to help get them calm down and resolve the issue at the lowest level possible.
So this is kind of training that we have actually done for several years. We actually were involved in it prior to a lot of the issues that took place in 2020. And now you see across the country, the academies of each state are requiring such training to each one of the officers throughout the states on an annual, I should say on an annual basis, usually it's biannual basis. So the various academies throughout the country are still coming up with curriculums and improvements to the curriculums of such training events for certifications for these trainings that take place. This is something that, like I say, it's nationwide. Scott County is not necessarily on the cutting edge of such training, but like I said, we were training, we were involved in these trainings, if I'm correct, all the way back about a decade ago. So this is something that has been building in law enforcement. We continue to go on.
Thank you. So we have a few more minutes here, about 5 still left, so this is probably gonna be the last question here, but give me a mix which number one, well, why should people be paying attention to who's in office? Why should people know what's going on in the sheriff's department? And you know, you can go ahead and give a little bit of your own farewell to them as well.
For a republic, your representatives make all the difference in the world to your life is like in your day-to-day life. If you're not paying attention to who is representing you, you get essentially just being a sheep in our community. And I think it's important that if you live in a republic, everybody is involved in their community with themselves. So when you are a elected official, I think it's extremely important that you are as much a part of the community as you possibly can, and that people have the ability to access you and ask you any questions that you need to answer. Unfortunately, every once in a while, there are questions that you are unable to answer because open investigations, obviously, personnel matters are still some that are restricted. But everybody should be involved in the sheriff's race as well, because it's going to tell you what your priorities are. for your law enforcement, and law enforcement is one of the most visible parts of your government. You get the opportunity to tell that individual what you expect of them if they're in office and while they're in office. So that's what I believe is I believe in an elected sheriff. I believe it's very, very important, and I believe that people should be very involved in selecting who their sheriff is.
As the sheriff said, as with any elected official, and we've got a few others in the room, it's important to know who they are, what they represent. They should hopefully represent you, what your interests are for the whole. But the one distinct feature of the office of sheriff is it is the chief law enforcement officer behind the county attorney's office for the counties that they serve. The sheriff is responsible only to the people. They report to the board for their budget, but they are exclusively at the they work at the purview of the people they serve. Right. So it is one unique position as far as law enforcement goes within your community that is directly responsible to the citizens that you serve. So it is vitally important that you get to understand that who that is. And as the sheriff said, it's important that you have access to be able to ask questions. Again, it's about building those relationships where people feel free to be approachable and have tough conversations sometimes. I want to say thank you for those that came out today to listen. I appreciate the opportunity to talk, be heard. And I would love to stick around after the auditors. If you have any questions, I would love the opportunity to listen. What are some concerns? So thank you for your time and have a good weekend.
Thank you, gentlemen. And let's a quick round of applause to the gentleman. And we're being noticed through that working for the sheriff. Joining us here in about 10 minutes or so, we'll start with the auditor. There are refreshments in the back there. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
They like it like live on. These.
How are you for sure?
Okay, is that be like, would that be like? Okay. What's the website?
It's a nationwide push because they see it as pipeline.
So it is on the Facebook where we have
That's not gonna be sharing the channels.
no, right.
Yeah.
My brother gave me.
Okay, perfect. All right, awesome.
Right now, it's at the yourself nice and something nice to see you and what's it?
Right here. How are you?
And so for all right, I think we're ready to get started here. I'm also a teacher, so I'm very tempted to read, but I won't. Anyways, welcome back. We're going to start our second portion of the evening. Again, welcome to our second annual People's Forum. This one's for the County Auditor's Office. This forum is hosted in collaboration with the St. Andrews Latinos Unidos, the Davenport National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, Davenport Local AAUW, the League of United Latin American Citizens, and the Power and Members Coalition. I am Andrew Salazar. I'll be your moderator today. This is a nonpartisan forum whose goal is to provide an avenue for candidates and citizens to be heard in an effort of transparency. Both these candidates were given budgets and advantages. Before we start, I'll remove the rules. Each candidate has 2 minutes for introductions, opening remarks. Afterward, each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. Just pay attention right up here. We'll have our lovely assistant here having the yellow at 1 minute and the red once you start reaching at 2 minutes. If responses are allowed, if you think maybe there's something else you need to add, just let me know. It's no problem. And at the end, we'll have a little bit of time set aside for those closing statements as well. And a reminder to the audience, just like before, you should have those note cards in front of you. If not, they're not too hard to find. Fill those out. Either raise your hand up, or those nice young gentlemen in the back there, they'll take those from you and they'll give them to you. Okay. Wonderful. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. I'll just pass this along. Just open an introduction. Okay.
Good morning. First of all, so my name is Carrie Tompkins. I am with the County Auditor. Just wanted to thank everybody for coming today, and thank you for the groups that sponsored this and put this together. I know it's a lot of work. So a little bit about myself. I'm going to look. So I was appointed in June of 2021. I was elected in November of 2022. When I was first asked to serve in this role, I was not familiar with the full responsibilities involved. I can't imagine anybody would be. So I did some research. Can't imagine I haven't met anybody who said when they grow up they want to be an auditor. So if anybody knows of somebody who would love to meet them. So I did some research on this position, and the more I looked into it and looked at what my background is, it certainly, and as I stepped into the role, certainly became clear that this is a good fit. Although I thought, I have retired from politics. I've served 6 years on Davenport City Council. I felt and still feel compelled to serve our community. So it was certainly something that I was excited about. I do believe that this position requires to be a trusted member of our community. My previous experience, as I said, was on Davenport City Council. That is a nonpartisan role. So I certainly have the experience of working with everyone. Doesn't matter what your political background is. My goal is to make decisions that's best for our community. So I'm running because I love what I do. I love the people that I work with. Done a lot of great things within the office. Certainly get into later. And I hope that I have the opportunity to continue in this role for 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Auditor Tompkins. I'm Matt Trimble, and I'm running via that Scott County Auditor and Elections Administrator. I believe our election should be trustworthy and not newsworthy. I'm a lifelong resident of Scott County, a graduate of St. Ambrose University with a master's in business administration. I've worked in information technology for 24 years. 15 of that was at St. Ambrose in a highly complex dynamic environment that also had to serve thousands of people at the same time while you were very concerned about cybersecurity and compliance. I'm currently working at the Mississippi Band Area Education Agency where I'm a network technician. I'm also the chief steward for the Communication Workers Union Local 7108. Since 2008, I've been active with local politics, working in the background usually, and been helping candidates and campaigns. And then in 2022 election, I was asked to serve as the Scott County Party Democratic Chair and worked closely with the Auditor's Office to understand the complexities, the challenges around running the election. And I think I can bring a lot more to the table than what we currently have. And I'm asking for your vote on November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So moving on, I think the question on a lot of our minds right away is, why should the people of Scott County vote for people?
Thank you. So again, as I said, that I've been in this position since June of 21. So I bring 3.5 years experience to this role. Through that time, I have become C3 certified, which is State Election Administrators Training. And I want to be clear in that training. This is something that you can't just come in and learn within a few months. It's something the program is set up. It takes about 12 months to go through. So to be C3 certified, you have to run a county-wide election. So it's definitely a process. So this certainly isn't something you can just step into. So there's a lot to learn, a lot of different roles. Again, I have 11 confirmed successful elections. I have proven that I will make hard decisions and that I will follow the law. And I think that's very important. In those 3.5 years since I've held this office, I have implemented a lot of changes. I had hired an election manager. So the first day that I was sworn in, I was literally handed a stack of resumes. Said, here you go, we need somebody, because the previous one had retired. He'd been in that role for a long time, did a great job. He certainly deserved retirement. So I hired an election manager. I went through all of the positions within the office, looked at where the service gaps were, restructured the office. I eliminated a part-time position. I also eliminated a level of management. And instead I replaced with a full-time election security position, because I do believe, and still do, obviously that's a very important position and it has proven to be invaluable. We implemented cross-training, streamlined a lot of processes, specifically electronic processes throughout the office and also throughout the county. So we're excited to continue with those. I protected county assets from fraudulent expenditures. Continued financial achievements. We've had the 37th year in a row of being awarded by the Government Finance Officers Association for our budgeting and our financial reporting. I've initiated community partnerships with the Quad City Chamber and Empowering Abilities. And I've updated and implemented technology through our website, social media, software, and with our election software. Continue to have a vision. There's things that I still want to see happen. So we're working on the platinum scanning project that will provide 24/7 availability for people so they can go online and view those records. I have a right to implement a staff management software system next fall, or after the fall, and assist with updating county software tools and advocating for legislative change.
Thank you, Auditor Tompkins. I believe I'm uniquely qualified with my background as a teacher, an IT professional, and a lifelong resident of Scott County, working with elections. Information technology is constantly evolving, and you have to keep your skills at a pretty deep level to be competitive, to protect your organization. Obviously, I'm currently not in the role of auditor, but I know that you know, even though you're not born to be an auditor, you're born to have the right to vote and have your right to vote honored by the office holder. And I believe there's been instances in 2022 and then recently in 23 where that right to vote is not honored by for the citizens that wanted to vote. It's unclear that any of those problems have been rectified. And so I will bring a new perspective on making sure elections in Scott County are handled properly and that the office is accessible and accountable. And that the Constitution of the United States is protected and honored. And give my full commitment that I'll work every day to implement processes and the changes in the office that need to reflect that commitment. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you both. Moving on here, one of the things that come to mind when we think about elections is security. So my question for you two is, how should or does the auditor's office handle accusations of voter fraud or questions of integrity of the Scott County elections?
Thank you. Absolutely, security is very important. Accusations should be certainly thoroughly reviewed by all of the stakeholders. So we work closely with the Sheriff's Department and our County Attorney's Office. So it's usually after an election, depending on the election, could be just one day, could be a few days after the election that I spend a lot of time on the phone. And that time is spent from listening to concerned citizens or poll workers, anybody who calls and says, hey, they had a concern about something. So I take that information, collect it, and I reach out to our local sheriff's department. They do the investigation, and then it gets turned over, depending on how that goes, to the county or to the, to the Attorney General's office. So I think every time there's an accusation, we certainly absolutely take it very seriously. And we follow the law, and I report that information and work with them. So in regards to accuracy and integrity, I think it's important that we educate people. One of the biggest issues that we deal with on a daily basis is misinformation. And so it's important that we get that information out. Iowa has great election laws. We use paper ballots. We have pre-testing and post-election audits, and those are all open to the public. So I think there's a lot that we can offer. Another piece that we do, if somebody has concerns about integrity, is we encourage them to get involved and be a poll worker, because that's the best way that they can see the process. I've had several people go through that, and then they're quite impressed with our process and the procedures. And then usually they recruit other people to help. So that's a great thing. So thank you.
Certainly, the auditor's office would investigate any sort of allegations of voter fraud or any other suspicious activities surrounding the election. The biggest threat is misinformation and peddling conspiracy theories in our community. Certain things happening that aren't based in fact and reality. And the auditor's office has a duty to commit to communicating much better about all of that and reach out to the community regarding that. The office would work with the Secretary of State, local law enforcement to pursue anything brought forward regarding voter fraud or any sort of suspicious activities surrounding the election. We have a duty to protect everyone's right to vote and make sure that you trust the election results the first time, and that Iowa has a long history, and Scott County specifically has a long history of having a competent auditor that people trusted going back to 1977. So I'll work to bring that to the office and make sure that what we had up until 2020, we have again someone that the community trusts with running the elections, and that the office is open and accessible, and you're a phone call away, or I'll come to you and talk through what's going on.
Thank you. And then when I press it, we can alternate, with, go back and forth here. Anyway, so thank you. Communities of color, have a large effect in most LULAC economics that we just heard a lot about, how they can affect the sheriff's department and the job they do. So my question for you is, how do you plan to reach out to communities of color, but historically had low voter turnout, and what specific issues do you plan to address?
Thank you. Proud to participate in the NAACP and LULAC forum. I've been an observer here for several years. I never thought of myself as a candidate to be on this at this table right now, asking for your vote, asking for the community to trust in me that I'll run the elections and the auditor's office properly. And at my core value, my belief is that everyone should have the right to vote, and not everyone believes that they can vote for their local town, and especially people in marginalized communities. Their voice has a history in the United States of being not heard and intentionally not heard. I don't think Scott County has done that intentionally, but it's my own experience and background as an educator and working in the community, volunteering for the groups that are hosting this, helping with technology or outreach. I want to continue building those relationships and extend them further, because now I'll be in a position where I can really bring the full power of the auditor's office to bring the community together to make sure everyone's voice is heard.
Thank you. So Scott County has about 170,000 residents. I believe it is my job to serve all of those residents. And so I think that is what's really important. My job is to be fair. My job is to treat every voter the same. And so I think that that is important. I think, well, I know that, again, we have great laws in Iowa. We have a lot of opportunities here in Scott County. So we have, I'm happy to share that we have a record-setting number of satellite sites for this general election of 14 all throughout our community. Since I've been in office and administration here, we have had increased satellites for several elections. We have, and satellites are early voting locations set throughout the community. So those are on nights, on weekends. We have office hours on the weekends. A lot of those sites are going to be on bus routes, on several bus routes. Iowa also has a great absentee program. It's free. All you have to do is contact our office. We'll send you an absentee ballot request form that's free with a self-addressed stamped envelope, so you can return it. No cost to you. We'll send you a ballot, and you'll have an envelope that you can return that in the mail. That's also no cost. So I think there's a lot of opportunities out there. We want to make sure that everybody has that opportunity and that they can out and vote. So we'll continue that. Another piece that satellites and poll sites, we offer curbside, so you don't have to get out of your car. We also have the express vote at every poll site and satellite site, and that's to help people who have issues with their vision and hearing. So I think there's a lot of opportunities, and we'll certainly continue on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're done here. If re-elected or one elected, what is that number one priority for this next era of office?
Thank you. The number one priority, if I get reelected, is I would like to advocate for some legislative change. Certainly, it's already been brought up that yes, we have had a few recounts here in Scott County. There was one in 2022 that I asked for. I certainly acknowledge that there was a difference between a paper trail and between the tag leader report, recognized that there was a concern. And so I made that request to our board of supervisors. It was quite the process. We learned a lot through it. I had a review after that was finished with vendors and stakeholders. And identified and made that recommendation to the board that we needed to have some new central count machines purchased. So we did. We also went through and redid our process. And since then, we haven't had any issues in regards to that. So that was something that we learned, we got through, but I'm excited to say that we learned from it, and again, haven't had that concern. Now from there, we have had 2 candidate recounts. Now to clarify, candidate recounts are very different. Those candidates actually determine who's going to. Sorry, yeah. Okay, so just quickly that the candidate recounts, there's no authority over the recount board. My authority as auditor is to just maintain the safety and security of the ballots. And so my concern right now is we have had some recount board members here in Scott County that received technical infractions, and that was specifically because they didn't follow the law. So my concern is that that will continue to happen. And so I've already advocated with the Secretary of State, with legislators, and other auditor partners. And I think that that needs to change. So number one is that there is some accountability for that. Thank you.
I don't understand what was just proposed. It seems like it might be against the Constitution. Either in Iowa or Iowa code at least. The recount panel, that candidate recount is made up of a third party and a person that each candidate agrees on, and then each candidate can bring forward someone from the community. In the most recent case, there were 2 former attorneys and then a community member. So, very educated people who knew the law, who understood it. The greater concern is that there's continued chaos around our elections. So changing the Iowa law to have a standing recount board, it is to me seems something that if we didn't have chaos in our community around our elections, we wouldn't need that law change. So I commit to making sure that our elections are not in the news, that are not chaotic, that people entering the candidacy understand their obligations, and committing that we're working with everyone involved, that we don't have a recount in like we did in 2022, where there's a letter of instruction and notice of technical infraction, the current auditor, that we make sure that everyone is trained properly and that we're communicating and working together to make sure our elections, are counted right the first time and the community trusts the results. And rewriting the Iowa law to eliminate this democratic policy that we currently have, I think is not a step that we need to slide into here in Scott County.
Thank you. I just wanted to provide some clarity. The law, the change that I'm advocating for is not to get rid of the recount board. I think that's great. Certainly support that. My concern is that there's no authority over that recount board. Yes, they need to be members of the community, absolutely. But unfortunately, there's no authority. Every other poll worker who works, and I know that there's poll workers here, anybody that works in my office, we all get sworn in. And that's to say that we're going to follow the law, we're going to uphold it. And I think that's important. Unfortunately, what happens with this recount board, they don't get sworn in. The problem is there's no accountability. That's what I'd like to see change. And what happened was in 23, that recount board did not follow the law. There is a letter from the Secretary of State. It says very clearly they chose not to follow the law. That's the problem. Thank you.
Matt, anything else? Thank you for that. The auditor's office is our public's office, as many are. So the next question here is, how does your political party affiliation contribute to how you view the role as an auditor?
I'm proud to be a Democrat. It aligns with my values and commitment to people, and that everyone is, no one is better than anyone else, and I'm no better than anyone else. But the larger commitment here as an auditor is that we honor the Constitution and everyone's right to vote. And I strongly believe that people will party. That'll be fair, honest, and accountable auditor. I'll work every day to make sure everyone in this room and everyone in our communities vote, and their access to the ballot is as accessible as it can be within our resources, within the law. Following the law is also means you're honoring the Constitution and everyone's right to vote. So I will leave my partisanship at the door and make sure that everyone else in that office leaves their partisanship at the door. So that's critical to you and trusting the office and trusting our elections and the operations of the office.
June. So similar, I certainly believe that this role is certainly very important, but it does not make policy. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about that. I don't vote to change law. I don't create policy. My job is to follow the law, and that's number one. So I certainly, again, I've served on Davenport City Council. That was a nonpartisan role. I worked with people from all sides. I think that that is important. I was asked to serve on this role. It wasn't something that I came after. I have a master's in social work from St. Ambrose University. Part of that training includes ethics. I take that very seriously. I look at perception, and again, that's important to me. So if there's somebody who's on the ballot and they come in my office and they want to meet with me, I'm happy to meet with them, but I meet with them out front where people can see. Because I don't want there to be perception that they're getting some kind of favor over somebody else. So I think that's very important. So again, I'm also, clearly this is a position, it is an elected official position role. I am a Republican, I am a conservative, I have those values, but my job is to follow the law in this role. And I reach out regularly to all parties. So I think that is, to me, that's not something that is, shouldn't even be an option. I have a job to do. Thank you.
It's about that time now. I have a few questions here from the audience. We'll see if we can get through. So first, what are your thoughts on Iowa dropping people from the role simply for not voting consistently? Are you concerned that this method could be negatively manipulated?
The primary job of the auditor is to follow the law. So the Iowa law has changed pretty dramatically since 2017. So if you don't vote in 2 general elections, you're suddenly either no longer registered or you're in an inactive status, which on the surface doesn't seem like a big deal. But if you have any challenges, if you live in a care facility and you're trying to vote, where you've got other types of issues that that your daily life is a challenge, the more restrictive our laws become, the harder it is for more people to have the right to vote and have their voice heard. But again, following the law in the auditor's office is critical, and it's the primary objective. But the challenges with changing an Iowa law is a concern.
Thank you. So I do believe it is important that we keep up with our rules, right? Registration rules. That is something that is owned by the state, not by the counties. Although we do work every day to make sure that those rules are updated. I think it's important that people understand that if you become inactive, so what happens is we send you a note card. It's actually sent by the state that will say that you've become inactive because you haven't voted. Certainly no reason to panic. You can call us and just say, hey, I'm still here, I'm still at this address, and not a problem, we will be back. Many times people don't realize that they become inactive because it's really just for us to know that, okay, they haven't been in a while, we just want to make sure that they're still at that address. So, excuse me. I'm not sure, again, yes, that is one of a recent law. We're still certainly going through this first rounds. But I think it's important that we have to keep up with them. And I think that if this isn't it, if this isn't the answer, I think it's important that we keep reviewing them and trying something so that we can maintain them and keep them updated. It doesn't have to be necessarily the one perfect answer, but I think it is important. So it is nice to see that legislators take that seriously and that they are trying something. So we continue to work with them and we continue to do that on a regular basis.
Recently, Iowa left the ERIC consortium, which allowed for multiple states to share just address information. And if you've moved to Illinois or a partner state, a member state, they would send a notice. There was a flow between the states where they communicated. We've got this person, they say they lived in another state. So there was the ability to clean up voter rolls without disenfranchising people. So Iowa is making it harder, which puts more work on the auditor's office to make sure we have accurate information, so that is an increasing challenge.
Thank you. And well, actually on that, the next question from the audience is asking exactly about that. Are you in favor of joining ERIC, the Electronic Registration Information Center, to clean up duplicate registration in multiple states when voters move states? Library.
So yes, the state did choose to be removed from that group. Do I support it? You know what? I'm not the expert. So that is up to the state. Each state handles that as they see fit. So our Secretary of State, Paul Pates, that's his decision to work with his staff, and I'll certainly support and follow through with whatever his choice is. Again, do I think there needs to be something? Absolutely. I know that there are new efforts that they're working with. So I'm confident that this will continue. I know that it's important. I have every right to believe that the state knows that is important. And so I think it's just something that they chose to withdraw from. We do work with partner states. We do work with other auditors, several people in the loop. I think that communication has already been established. We all believe that that's important. Everybody that's in this field. So, but absolutely, again, that is a state decision, and I will certainly support and follow through with whatever next role he sends our way.
So having a clean and accurate election of voter roll is really important to further down the line, run a clean election and make sure that everyone trusts the outcome of it. So I think it's probably a partisan thing because other states that haven't left ERIC don't have the same kind of problems we do. The voter challenges in Scott County that were an organized effort, and it is exploiting our departure from ERIC. So anyone with a name that matches someone else in Texas or California could suddenly be told that their vote is being, or their right to vote is being challenged. And so leaving ERIC opens the door for other things. So it makes it harder for the auditor's office. It's another layer of work that wasn't a full-time job, I'm sure. So it's making it more challenging, harder to comply with the law when you're dealing with increased chaos from outside.
Very much. So this next one, same topic, but it's kind of like two-part question. That's because you're not listening to one be. So I read it. So Karen, do you have a chain of custody policy for ballots and election equipment? If yes, is it available to the public? And then the second part is, Matt, will you make your chain of custody policy publicly available?
So yes, we certainly have a chain of policy or chain of command for all of our equipment and for the ballots. Poll workers see that on election day. They're part of that process. It's absolutely is there. It has been open to the public. So when we went through the election recount in 22, we had forums. I shared all of that online with the public and with the media. So absolutely, all of those documents are voidable. And so absolutely, that's something that is available and is important.
So the chain of custody for all election material and equipment is vital to maintaining the trust through the whole path of the election. And it's been demonstrated in 22 that there was the Secretary of State investigated and there was a notice of technical infraction and a letter of instruction. And there were two parts to that for the 22 election. Because there was inadequate chain of custody for materials. And not to peddle conspiracy theories because there's a lot of industry built around that, that we've got untrustworthy elections. But having that written down, having all of your staff know it and be able to understand the big picture of what's going on and documenting where every piece of equipment is, understanding who's got control of it, limiting access is vital to knowing and trusting that the chain of custody is being honored. Access to the voter database, the poll books beforehand, making sure that if there's limited access, a need to know kind of operation or role base is really important. And to know publicly and announce that, making sure it's accessible to journalists and community, that they understand, okay, yes, Scott County has their act together. They're telling us this is how we're handling our election materials and equipment, and within the parameters of it being an open, not leading up to being exploited by a malicious person in the community or from outside. So it's important that everyone understands that and it's clearly articulated.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Next question here from the audience. It's, what do you think about changing the voting age? And I'll add on to, what do you think are some of the benefits or drawbacks of either lowering or making it? Yes.
So voting age is 18. If you are 17, you can actually vote in the primary election if it's a general year. Actually, our city school had primary elections as well. And so, again, this is something that's up to legislators. I think, you have to be 18 in order to serve our country. I think 18 is a good number. It's part of being an adult at that point. So I would be supportive of honestly either way. It's up to legislators, but I do think 18 is a good age. Certainly gets a lot of people involved. We do work in the schools, which is a great thing. It's nice to see young students. I guess at 18 or 17, not young students anymore, but young people get more involved and get more active. So that is something that certainly I'm supportive and hope to see more of.
So the importance of voting at 18 is can't be understated. There's a movement in other parts of the country where they pre-register people when you're 16, when you get your driver's license. That when you turn 18, you have the right to vote. I think it has potential if we also follow up as a community to create more voters and more engaged citizens. If you have the right to vote and choose your own leaders, and that there's this culture around voting that you want to be part of it, I think it's important. We obviously the auditor can't change the law, but we can advocate for having that kind of program where you would have people pre-registered and bring that into the schools more than it is now. Some of that is resources, but I think it's important.
Just wanted to clarify, so currently we do work in the schools. It is a great program. I actually help staff create a QR code with a business card, and we send those out to the students throughout our local high schools. Also, we've offered to go in and do voter registration drives. We have 2 schools in this area, which is really exciting. There's no award through the state, which is the Carrie Chapman Cat Award. And Rivermont Collegiate has received that award where you get a high percentage of your senior class that are registered. They've received it, I think it's been 5 years in a row. And since I've been in office, Pleasant Valley has stepped up and they received that award last year as well. So it is something that we do. It's very exciting. It's a great opportunity. And certainly we want to continue that.
According to Iowa law, the auditor's office does need to go into the schools. And because beyond these 2 schools, I'm not aware of other schools being engaged by the auditor's office to register voters and provide some civics education. Could you go into more detail?
Yes, we've actually done a voter registration drive on it for Scott. We've also been in Davenport schools, but we reach out every year to the local schools and send them information. It has been harder, certainly, since COVID and with security has increased. And so it is more difficult to get in. That is very true. But we always offer to do presentations and to do drives. We also work with colleges, so St. Ambrose and Eastern Iowa Community College. So that's a great thing. We've done voter registration drives. We've also at Scott Community, or I'm sorry, at St. Ambrose, we bring some of our election, express vote, and they do a fun election or mock election, if you will, for favorite pizza and something else. So we certainly do engage students, and I think that's important.
Our next question here. I only assume it's a quick answer. Are non-US citizens able to vote in Scott County?
Absolutely not. Iowa law makes it very clear that you have to be a US citizen. And so it's that simple.
That's correct. You have to be a citizen of the United States. What that is digging into is some dog whistle stuff from the far right, trying to make it seem like people are voting illegally. That is not happening, and not happening.
Is the Carrie Chapman Cat Award, is it mandated at the state level or just county?
No, it's actually a state program that they have. I don't know when they started it, but again, we have, I think, from Pleasant, I can't remember if it was Rivermont Collegiate, but anyway, we were one of 3 schools across the state, so it's exciting. And again, as of last year, we had 2 schools in the area that participated, so that's pretty exciting.
Sure. All right, so you kind of referenced this a little in some of your responses before regarding people going to vote and making sure it's the people doing it. This next question here is, there is a national conversation about people voting illegally. What processes are in place to prevent that from happening? And has Scott County seen any individuals voting illegally?
Since I'm not in the auditor's office right now, I wouldn't have access to that, the actual information. But what that is an election denial, theme across the United States that is trying to make people not trust what's going on with our elections. So if their candidate loses, they can claim that it was all of these people who are undocumented voting. In some cases, in different states, there are laws that allow non-citizens to vote for school board election or a municipal election. Not in Iowa, but in other parts of the country. So that's being turned into some huge thing that, as far as I know, isn't happening here. And it's part of the election denial movement, which is a battle that you're fighting in.
we get asked this question a lot. Again, Scott County and state of Iowa. So for the state of Iowa, I believe that we are nationally recognized. I believe we are 7th in the state right now to have very secure and very good election administration laws. I'm proud of that. I think that's a great thing. When I talk to auditors in other states, they look at, we are seen as certainly as a role model, and that's a good thing. So I think those are great laws that we have in place. So do we have that issue in this area? No, we do not. What are in place? You have to show ID. There are things that we go through our system during that election process, and if something is found, if we have a question about anything, there's opportunities for somebody if they're at the polls. So it could be a poll worker, it could be a community member. You can always challenge somebody, so that's an opportunity. And in addition, if we find something on our own, we would turn that over to our county attorney's office or our sheriff's department. And so that's why we have that process in place. So. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on here. What are your current thoughts on the state administration's voting initiatives?
Again, I think the state of Iowa does a great job with our election laws, our voter initiative purposes or programs that we have. Like I said, we work with the schools. Locally, same thing. I work with different groups. Happy to do any presentations. I get out, get information out. The state does as well. Since I've been in this office, I've increased communication via several levels. So typically we do press releases, we do presentations, we have social media, we have a website. So there's lots of different avenues, but since I've been in this position, I've also initiated a postcard that gets mailed to every household with a registered voter. Everybody should have received one in September, and that information gives you details about how to vote and what some of those important dates that are coming up. So I think that's important. So some other things, again, increasing access. So we have more satellite sites, locations that are available. So there's been a lot of effort that we've done. I think the state has also done a good job, and we just continue to work with them and make sure that we increase those efforts.
So we've got an aging population that is technically challenged in some cases, and it's important that people in care homes or care facilities that aren't using Facebook, that aren't using digital media, don't know what a QR code is, that we're still in touch with them, that we're contacting them, because that's Iowa. As we get older, we're not. We need to meet people where they are. So I would plan to work within the law to make sure that we do that, and so everyone's voice is heard. Iowa, has more fair laws than other states in recent years, but there's room for advocacy, which I'll participate in.
So, what has been done, or what has been done to reach out to non-English speaking voters?
At this time, the state of Iowa does not acknowledge a second language. And so I know that it's been up for discussion. So again, we have to follow the law. All of our forms are within English. And so I know that that's something that is being discussed now legislatively. If that happens in the future, then we'll certainly have those available. That is important. Again, we work with a lot of organizations, happy to do that. We can so every voter can have assistance when they come in and vote. So if they bring somebody in to help them interpret what's on the ballot, that's an opportunity. And certainly we're happy to work with them on that.
And I would work within the law to make sure that anyone whose language isn't English, their first language, has some access to the information prior to their vote. That will be a resource challenge, but I think there are a lot of people in the community who would like to see that improve. So if we've got a large Hispanic population, Vietnamese population, people who've been for a long time that deserve that access, even if they're a recent arrival. We've had long-standing communities that need to be on.
Jim? Thanks. Could you tell me a little bit about the importance of having an auditor? Why should the public pay attention to trying some?
So some auditors in Iowa have a track record of ignoring the state law. I have proven that I will do the right thing and follow the law, even when it is not easy. I have 11 confirmed successful elections over 3.5 years. This position is very important. Again, it's not legislative, it's not creating policy, and it's not voting, it's following the law. And if elected, I will continue to do that.
So this is a very important question. The person who's trusted with the auditor's office must respect the Constitution, and by way of the Constitution, every citizen's right to vote. So the actions of the current auditor it demonstrates the lack of that in the 22 election cycle, with being cited by the Secretary of State for not following the law twice, and then creating chaos around our elections. So with Pleasant Valley school board election, things weren't handled properly, and people were also cited for not following the law. The important part of the auditor's office is that everyone trusts what's going on, and that there's open and fair elections and accessible. The people in the office are serving our community, and you can be approach that as servants. So I think this is a service office, and that protects the Constitution and follows the law with every aspect, and is compliant with state and local governments.
And finally, I will give you guys some time for some closing remarks.
So thank you all for your attention and commitment to democracy, being here to listen to us present our case for why we want to be an auditor in Scott County and trusted with our elections. I'm a lifelong resident of Scott County. My family lives here. My 2 daughters have returned to Scott County to start their adult lives. And so there's a rooted history here for me. And I want to bring my commitment to democracy and the Constitution to everyone in our community. I think I have a unique background. My qualifications bring a lot to the table that the current auditor does not have capacity to deliver. And I'll work every day to make sure that we're following the law with elections, and then with our acquisition of hardware for poll books and any new equipment that we have to be aware of months and years in advance, and that we work within the law, follow the law on acquiring and changing out hardware, which has been an issue with the current auditor. And most of all, I'll be an auditor that comes to people, works with people, is everyone's auditor, not a select few playing partisan games with people's access to the polls. So I thank you for your attention and your commitment to democracy, and I ask for your vote on November 5th.
Thank you. Again, thank you to the group that has coordinated this. That is important. And thank you for those who have attended comment today. So again, I just want to go a little bit of my background. I have a master's in social work from St. Ambrose. I have over 25 years of management experience. That is in the for-profit, nonprofit, and government sectors. I served 6 years on Davenport City Council, where I was chair of finance and mayor pro tem. Again, that was a nonpartisan role. I've served on numerous boards and committees throughout this community. I've been awarded the Quad Cities Area Leader Over 40 from the Blackhawk College Foundation. Completed our National Association of Counties High Performance Leadership Academy training, and I've been the auditor for 3.5 years, serving and conducting 11 confirmed elections. Yes, there was a technical infraction. There was one from 2022, and as I said, I called that. I made that decision. So I have proven that I will make those tough decisions and follow the law. And from there, we learned the process, we made it better, and we've never had that concern again. The issues with the candidate recounts, I've already explained. It is a candidate, that is a process issue. And I agree that needs to be changed, and I've been advocating for that change. I've been doing this for 3.5 years. I have the experience. I love what I do. I'm running because I enjoy serving the community. I've done it for many years. I've also been in this community for most of my life, since I was 5. So grew up here, my children grew up here. This is an important role. It's very important to follow the law. I think there's a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding of what is a part of this role. There are actually 3 different departments within my office: business and payroll, business and finance. So we run payroll, we do accounts payable. I have a background in that. We also have taxation. So I work with holding our county records. And then certainly elections, which is obviously the most known throughout the community. But I enjoy what I do. I love the people that I work with. And I would love to have another 4 years to continue to serve in this role. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, our time here has elapsed. And I thank everyone who chose to participate in democracy today. Please join us at our next one taking place on October 12th. At the Eastern Avenue branch of Davenport Library, the candidates running for Scott County Supervisor and Iowa's first congressional district. I'll leave you with this. As you leave here today, I hope it's with the audacity to believe that you can make a difference. And remember that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Yes. Thank you.
Well, it's been, moderating, did a wonderful job today. And, thank you for coming out, that's something I think, thank the candidates for coming out and participating. Hopefully they answered the questions and you'll be more educated as we approach the election. Thank you.
I love it.